Action.
Watches are actually tools. Tools that tell us the time. Little machines made by more or less distinguished manufacturers with the aim to sell them. That's actually all quite logical, isn't it? But then there are these shiny exceptions. Watches that were not made to be worn, watches that were not intended to be sold, and probably still ate up a lot of R&D cost for a company. And today I'm going to talk about one of those really crazy watches. I don't even need to introduce it, because by looking at the profile you immediately recognize what it is. What is it really? Well, it is the Rolex Deep Sea Special, launched, produced as a first test model in the early 1950s, given to Picard, the famous ocean scientist, to test how deep really can a wristwatch dive without exploding or imploding. A good handful of watches were actually given in 1953 and later in 1960 to Mr. Picard to be tested and to be attached outside of the submarine. But then, to celebrate this extraordinary achievement, Rolex made a small, very limited batch of commemorative watches. Commemorative because they do have the 23rd of January 1960 date in sort of green enamel engraved on the case back, with the depth in meters and in feet. This watch here is actually also a museum watch and was originally gifted by Rolex to a long trusted retailer in Germany and owner of a private watch museum. When most regrettably the museum was dissolved, its content were sold at auction, and this is when this watch in the early 2000s was sold for the first time publicly. Still, I'm not quite sure what I should think of it. Is it a Formula One race car for the wrist? Or something like the space shuttle that is not made for commercial purposes but to really test the boundaries of engineering and of mankind's intelligence and know-how? Is it just probably the very watch on which Rolex built for the last 3/4 of a century its reputation as the leading maker of tool watches and notably divers watches? Meaning, is the deep sea, the way it was used in 1953 and later in 1960, sort of the Adam and Eve moment of Rolex's diving watch DNA? Probably all of it. And I'm extraordinarily pleased to have this perfectly crisp and all original example from the later series of the batch to come to auction this November at Philips Geneva.